Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ni hao. My name is Christopher Ludwig. I'm the editor of the Automotive Logistics Group, responsible for the editorial content in the magazines that you've received, hopefully in your delegate packs and also on our website. Just a quick sort of reminder, this is the session called Supplying the World. We're looking at parts, import and export globally from China to China. If you're interested in the finished vehicle logistics session, which is just next door near to the reg desk, now is the time to leave us. Otherwise, you'll be going in the middle. Okay, so I think that was a really interesting opening session this morning. We heard quite a lot about, let's say, the very high-level view, particularly from the government and what sort of reforms and changes we might expect or hope for. I think it's very clear that in China the focus now is on upgrading and adding more value to the logistics chain, not simply volume. So that was very clear. Obviously a strong market, up whatever it is, 10%. Some debate about whether we're going to head to 25 million, 30 million, 70 million vehicles. But either way, it's a huge market and there's still more growth to come. And this session, so if we were starting off very high level last time, I think now we're going to start to drill down more to your day-to-day operations and some of the challenges you're facing. Again, this session called Supplying the World, looking specifically at parts flow in and out of China. I suppose if I can just maybe kick us off with a little bit of a macro picture there, because China is often called the world's factory. But as you know, for exports of vehicles at least, it's a little bit different, not quite an export champion yet. On the parts side, I think the volume is significant and will grow, but it's a narrative that's sort of been evolving over the last couple of years. Those of you at this conference maybe 6 or 7 years ago, the big story might have been pushing low-cost country sourcing. Everyone had a purchasing target, I'm talking about OEMs in the US or Europe, to source a certain amount of material in China, in Asia, and of course many did that. And 6 or 7 years later, I think what we see, we're still seeing that of course, but things have changed. China isn't necessarily low cost if you take the total supply chain into consideration, including logistics cost, land cost, inventory, flexibility that you might want in your order, in your order and production. I don't think there's a supply chain executive that I talk to at an OEM who doesn't put more focus on total landed cost and total enterprise cost and things like that. So there might be less of this kind of LCC or best cost country sourcing as we heard about, but instead, obviously, there's still a huge amount of parts and material flowing in and out of China, not least because of global platforms and shared co-location of models between China, US, Europe, Latin America. And I think that is clearly, or that seems only to be growing, especially as the Chinese market becomes even more sophisticated vehicles produced, whether it's the compact SUV segment, which is growing so hot right now, and parts that are stamped for that sort of specification, I think, can be shared and co-located across China and other regions. So a very interesting segment, I think. Obviously, when car makers are starting to base their production in China, they also import quite a lot of material, at least in the initial stages. And of course, there's the Chinese car makers themselves who are pushing their exports to emerging markets, maybe starting with CKD or SKD. So there's a lot of opportunity and certainly a lot of challenges out there. So what we have here is a panel put together to discuss that. We're going to have a couple of presentations, and then I think we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A. So we're going to first have a joint presentation from Gefco, Rene Varek, who's the sales director of Gefco 1520. I'm going to let him explain what Gefco 1520 is, also alongside with Jason Xu, the sales director for Gefco China. Then we'll hear from Robert Strain, who's the vice president of the automotive sector for Asia Pacific at Siva Logistics. And then joining us on the panel, not with the presentation, but joining us for the Q&A and discussion, is Marco Wang, who's head of parts export operations for Fiat-Chrysler in Asia Pacific. So a really good mix, I think, of providers, OEMs, different perspectives there. So I'd like to invite Gefco now for their presentation. Thank you.
Ni hao, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Christopher already mentioned, so we will be covering the session Supplying the World. It's pretty challenging for China and automotive industry if we talk about the CIS countries and Russia. I will be covering in my presentation about the market dynamics, giving you a bit insight and overview about Russia, talking about what the 1520 is about, and then focusing about the solutions, what Gefco can provide to the Chinese OEMs and Chinese automotive industry. I will be doing this together with my colleague from China, Gefco China, Jason Chu. 1520 and Gefco. Most of you are probably aware that in end of 2012, Gefco, or part of Gefco, was purchased by Russian Railways. Gefco, who has been historically a French company, became part of the Russian Railways galaxy. Due to these changes, as well, our company decided to form a new cluster. This cluster is called 1520. And this is actually the gauge width, the measures of the gauge on the railways in this territory. Gefco cluster in 1520 covers the Russia, Kazakhstan, Baltic states, Belarus, Ukraine, and all the countries from the former Soviet Union. Our cluster is as well working closely with Scandinavia and Mongolia. So this is a new business unit and a new strategy. And as well for our Chinese colleagues, it gives a new opportunities to work closely in these countries. Just to give you a short snapshot and history what the market is about in this region. If you look into the market dynamics in the two biggest countries in our region, then in Russia, the sales of the automotive finished vehicles have been pretty much like a roller coaster, coming down from 2008 almost up to 3 million, to 2009 slightly above 1.5 million. Sales have been increasing steadily again and peaking in 2012 up to 2.9 million and coming down again in 2013. Looking on Chinese brands, how Chinese brands have been performing in these countries, there has been pretty steady growth year by year, and this growth is expected to continue. Even the market itself has difficulties. In Ukraine, the market has not been having such kind of changes, such kind of ups and downs. But as well, if you look into the Chinese brands, then Chinese brands have been having a steady growth in Ukraine, but on much bigger market share. If in Russia we are talking about 2 up to 3% market share for Chinese producers, then in Ukraine, Chinese brands have up to 10% of the total market. There are as well 2 other countries where Chinese brands are pretty active. This is Belarus, but Belarus is on very low base, and Kazakhstan, where automotive sales in last years have been really increasing fast. And in 2013, the increase was 77%, so it is pretty big. And as well, Chinese brands becoming much bigger players year by year. Talking about the main market and performance in main market, then as you can see from the chart, that in 2012, as I already mentioned, total market was 2.9%, and Chinese brands 2.9 million vehicles, and Chinese brands 2.6%. In 2013, increase of Chinese brands have been 1.1%, so up to 3.7%. Even due to the market has been having difficulties, the big 4 players, big 4 producers from China, have been managed to increase the total volume, and together with the total volume as well, the market share. So that means that Russia and CIS countries have become more and more important for Chinese automotive industry. Despite the challenges how to get there, Chinese have been becoming more successful. In Russia, there are mainly the production of the automotive industry, what is actually based in different clusters. If you look into the south region, where we are talking about, this is the close between the Caspian Sea and Black Sea. So in this region, mainly the Chinese brands are using the production facilities, producing in Cherkassk and Taganrog region. Biggest cluster, of course, has been historically Tolyatti by the Volga River, where the local brand Lada is manufactured. Another manufacturing clusters from west, Kaliningrad, St. Petersburg, and central around Moscow, Kaluga. Historically, most of the leading car makers and the market leaders have established their productions or assembly plants in Russia. This has been the trend, and as well lately Chinese automotive producers have been following it. In Russia, to support the automotive industry, there has been by law and by the support of the government established special economical zones. If we talk about the economical zones where the automotive industry is extremely active, then we talk about the Sverdlovsk region, we talk about the Yelabuga region in Tatarstan Republic, Samara region, what is Tolyatti, and as well Lipetsk region, what is close to Moscow. These are the new special economical zones, what have been made and supported by the government with special terms, special taxation, where government is promoting the new industries and new investments. Logistic challenges, this is very theoretical part, but anyway, if we look into the development of the supply chain, then of course there are different phases, starting from the basic export via dealers and ending up managing the overseas plant building. For Chinese automotive industry, today there is a pretty big mix. Different OEMs are having a different strategy. Even the same companies having the strategy using the different methods, different ways, and different supply chains. Of course, it's very important to manage the flows and manage the flows efficiently, especially when trading with the big country and entering the big country like it is Russia. So it is very important to have an understanding how to be efficient. More and more Chinese, as I already mentioned, have decided as well to manage the overseas plants. Today, this is in the region in south, between the Black Sea and Caspian Sea. Region itself has been decided as well due to the governmental support and favorable taxation systems. But in many cases, of course, there are challenges because to enter this region and have efficient logistical solutions is a pretty big challenge. To enter and supply the Russian market, of course, it's complicated. Even China shares with Russian Federation a big borderline. The entry points over this border, there are not so many entry points over that border. Even if there are entry points, they are geographically or by climate pretty difficult. As well, to use the traditional routes have been pretty difficult because if you take the ocean freight, then the distances are big, and except the short sea connections through the Far East. Challenge in Russia has been historically the customs clearance. A lot of companies are afraid about how to manage the customs clearance. I can ensure that customs clearance procedures in Russia during the last years, year by year, have been becoming more efficient. There is already electronic customs opportunities, and customs offices are really widely spread over the country. To optimize the international transportation scheme is the challenge, because having vast territories, having long distances, it's always very important to find the best ways how to enter, how to use and maximize the distribution centers, where the distribution centers are actually located, who is the best transportation company who can produce the mix of the transportation modes, because managing the flows in the long distances has to have a mix between the ocean, rail, trucking, and the air freight. And of course, how to manage the aftermarket supplies. And to see that all in complex is a big task to manage. Main routes from China to Russia. As I already mentioned, that there is a traditional ocean routes. So most of the Chinese today CBUs or CKDs on containers using the ocean freight. Either going through the Baltic Sea to St. Petersburg, Kotka, or the Baltic ports, or using the Black Sea, Novorossiysk, what is the Russian port, or Ilyichovsk, Odessa, what are the ports in Ukraine. Some of the brands, not so much Chinese, but Asian brands as well, using the Far East ports from Vladivostok, entering the Russia in Far East. More and more railway companies are developing the solution via the rail, so land bridge options from Manzhuli, Zabakalsk, and as well Alashanku, Tastuk. And probably these are the ways where and routes to the market what will be developing in the future fast. Talking about Gefco and Gefco solutions, then Gefco China, Gefco Russia are actually offering all the routes. All the variety of the routes is available for our customers, for you. Historically, yes, we have been focusing on ocean and using the Ust-Luga, St. Petersburg ports in the Baltic. We have been lately, in the last 2 years, developing fast access to the market through the Black Sea, because we think that it is as well the future gateway to the Asian producers, to Russia. But becoming a member of the Russian Railways family, we as well have started to develop and have already had some experience on rail transportation. That means that the entrance from Manzhuli, Zabakalsk, and Alashanku, Tastuk are the ways what are strategically very important for us as well to develop. After getting the vehicles to the market, of course, it's very important to establish the distribution. If you look into Russia, then Russia is 11 time zones. Can you imagine 11 different time zones? So to manage the distribution on all these zones is a big challenge, because the distances between the east and west are huge. Gefco has directly and indirectly through our partners established a compound network covering European part of the Russia, but as well covering the eastern parts, Siberia and Far East. We have our own compound network. We have our own setting of the logistical schemes, and we are using the rail and truck transportation to manage the distribution most efficient way. Using the entry points in St. Petersburg, Novorossiysk or Zabakalsk, we can establish the fast entry, custom clearance, and loading either on trucks or either on rail. Using the different locations of the compounds in different locations, either by Moscow, in Siberia, Novosibirsk, Yekaterinburg, and so on, gives us opportunity to have a really efficient distribution for CBUs all over the countries. We are building as well the block train solutions, and this is one of the challenges for us in this year and coming years. Of course, it's very difficult today to have a block trains per producer, and we are looking for opportunities to have a consolidation for Chinese brands, or either to have a consolidation for Chinese brands with some other Asian producers. But this is the fastest way. If we want, and if you want to have optimization of the timing, then the block train solution is the best way to enter the market. We are looking, these are the business cases and studies we have been now studying. We're talking about Shanghai to Moscow, opportunity through the Vostochny port, what could be up to 22, 25 days, compared with solution on the ocean via the Baltic gates, via the Ust-Luga to Moscow, what is 44 to 48 days. Or Sabaikalsk, what is probably the fastest way, could be about around 20 days. Russian Railways is working very hardly now to increase the speed on the block trains. Currently, block trains in Russian Railways territory are moving 900 kilometers in one day, in 24 hours. But the target is that from next year, all the block trains have to be moving with speed of 1,200 kilometers in 24 hours. Just a couple of slides before I give over to my colleagues. So aftermarket is a big challenge, especially if we talk about supplying the spare parts to all the dealers. We are looking into the optimization of the flows. At the moment, Gefco in Russia is not actively working with the spare parts and aftermarket, but we have a project ongoing to enter this business. And we are looking into especially to optimize the flows coming from Europe and coming from Asia. Currently, most of the spare parts for the aftermarket have been supplied, even the Asian producers are supplying via Europe. And this is very much one-way flow, coming from west to east. But you have optimization and some savings and efficiency for our customers. We are as well looking to set up direct flows from Asia, from different producers, and of course for China, to optimize the flows going back from eastern side to west. Gefco is well known as a 4PL provider. In the region I'm working in 1520, we are providing for several customers, and not only in automotive logistics, 4PL solutions. In the complex environment, in the big territory, we think that this is one of the solutions where our customers can be very efficient, because we can cover a very fast spectrum of the different services, including all the different activities asked by our customers, and as well representing our customers in many different ways. So therefore, I'm really looking forward to develop the business with Chinese automotive industry. I think we can be much more efficient. You are growing fast. Our market is as well very dynamic. And China supplying the world means as well China supplying the 15, 20 countries. My colleague from China will briefly tell you about the business case we are working and how we are working from China to Russia. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jason. I'm from Gefco, China. I'm going to present a business case that we are doing in China, because my colleagues has presented more from the Russia perspective, but I'm present from the China perspective, how we are looking at the supply to the world or supply to Russia. Okay, this is the background of the business case that we are doing. It's a typical China sourcing project. We have one customer right here in the Western Russia, is a plant. It's one of the key European OEMs. So they have Chinese suppliers, plus over 50 Chinese suppliers, and have 350 parts, different parts, and supply 4 car models that will be assembled in this plant. On a yearly basis, the volume is around 3,000 TU that's exported from China. I think from this map, I think it's no different on standard, consolidation or export GM and Ford are doing. But I think the challenge will be different on the different OEM. So if you look at the challenges, I think might be the same. Is from the origins that we need to consider the supply compliance, and also the production and the inventory to ensure that the customer has the proper inventory, and also the consolidation. Consolidates because they have over 50 suppliers that we need to consolidate it and into a container and ship to Russia. And the custom and the trade is also very important, especially on the destination side. And on the destination, on the plant level, on the really consumption level, that they will consider the inventory control, lead time, and logistic cost. In the end, it's more like a balance between the lead time and the logistic cost. Oh, this is the background that I can share with you before we come back to our solution. Okay, this is our solution that we are doing in China to supply this plant. So you can see this is a door-to-door solution, supply chain, from the supply door till the end to the car plant OEM. But I want to just to share with you, if you look at the whole supply chain, there's one big difference on what the other OEM is doing, is that we don't have the RDCs or the inventory stock here at the cruise plant. But to cover this, we have a concept called GRT long range. So we put the stock right to China, to the origin. So this is our key to our solution. So you can see we have a consolidation center, but these consolidation centers have a two key role. One, we call it VMI, and the other is cross-dock. So VMI is the safety stock that to supply to the plant, that we need to ensure that we can supply the right quantity of parts to the plant. And also, for this VMI concept, is very important that when you develop the new suppliers, and when the supply capability being grown, is need to ensure that they are be ready. So with this VMI, we can have a certain stock in this VMI warehouse to ensure that the supplier can be continually grow. In this cross-dock here is a consolidation. So you can see there's another flow. Is some supplier can directly deliver to this cross-dock so that we make the consolidations. So all the cross-dock is very important that we receive the pull orders from the plant. Then we receive orders that we do the consolidation. So normally we will have a loading plan to build up to the containers. And between the VMI and the cross-dock, there is also one important role is trading. So normally is that the supplier directly supply to the OEM, but in this case, that this OEM has a China trading company in China. That means all the parts are actually sold to these Chinese suppliers, and then when the parts are delivered to this cross-dock, the inventory ownership will belong to this OEM. So because of this trading, that means the shipper is the OEM trading company, that we can build up, we can do the exportations on behalf of the trading company, that we can issue one export invoice for one container instead of multiple supply invoice. This is also very important. Also, in terms of the supply flow, so you can see we have 3 different modes of inbound into the warehouse. We have the supplier, direct delivery, we arrange the pickup, and also we have the milk run. That's a different supplier, milk run to our warehouse. And also we have the supplier that directly deliver to our cross-dock. So we have the VMI and the cross-dock. So our concept is to reduce the stock. So if the supply is ready, so we move them to the directly delivered to the cross-dock. So to more elaborate, you can see this is some of the pictures in our warehouse. This is the layout of this warehouse. They are in the same warehouse. It's 5,000 square meters. So you can see we have the where my area. We have the cross dock. We have a certain stock here. So this is our cross dock pictures here, and this is our where my. Here you can see something different because when we receive orders, it's based on the pallets or box. That means we can have more flexibility to ensure that we have a very good container fill rate, so on pallets and box. So that means we'll do some pick and pack operation in this warehouse. So to give a summary, just a few keywords on the characteristics of our proposal. First of all is a WMI consolidation, that we are move the GRT, the IDC to the origin, into China, into Shanghai. And then it's a pool order. It's everything is a pool. And also very important is that we have a full visibility and EDI and the connectivity with OEM. And then, as I mentioned before, trading is very important. It's one export invoice per container. The shipper is OEM instead of the supplier. And we have the system. System is very important. So we have three systems. We have WMS for the WMI and also for the cross-dock. And the plant can have full visibility on this WMS. And also we have the EDI. EDI is received orders through the WRP system. And we also have the track and trace. That means all the full visibility, the plant can have the full visibility. Only because this system, a full visibility, a full control, that we are be able to do such kind of long-range GIT solution. And also container fill rate. As I mentioned before, that because of these trading services, we are more flexible to fill the container to either in pallets or in box to ensure that we have very good fill rate. And also we have different mode of supply pickup that we can control all the pickup from the supply door. We can ensure the full visibility directly from the supply door. And also control tower team. This is very important because China is 8,000 square meters away from the plant. So we have, for sure, we have a control tower team to control all this. We have a team that facing the supplier, to manage the supplier. We also have a team facing the OEM trading companies. And also we have a customer that's facing team that's facing the OEMs. In the end, that's also very important is on the customer clearances. Also because we have one export invoice, it facilitates and reduces the customer clearance time in the destination. Overall, this is our solution. I think we are different. We are developed along with OEM. And you can see that now we are for the OEM, only for the Russia, but actually it can be multiple to the different destination. It's the same business model. Okay, to conclude my presentation, just a very 1 minute to have a quick snapshot of our company. I have 6 numbers to share with you. So we are the top 10 European logistics providers. We are present in 150 countries and $4 billion euros last year. Our shareholder is Russian Railways, 75%. The rest is the PSA. And then we have 11,000 employees and have 65 nationality. In the end, we have 5 key activities that we think because we are dedicated to the automotive logistics. So we have the finished vehicle transportation. We ship 4 million. In China, we ship 100,000 cars on a yearly basis. So we have the warehousing and return packaging. This is for the inbound flow, engineering, plant logistics, GRT, sequencing, and Micron, everything for the OEMs. And also we have OLAN. OLAN is the LTO and FTO. And then the custom tax is for the custom clearances. In the end, we have the overseas. Overseas, we have 3 main products. One is ocean freight, air freight, and rail, multimodal for the rail solution from China to Russia. Okay, thank you very much. This is all our presentation from Gefco China. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to Rene and to Jason. A shared, but I think 2 very interesting perspectives there in different ways to, in this case, supply Russia and then sort of challenges on both sides. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A to come back on some of that, but I'd like to invite now Robert Strain from SIVA.
Thank you, Automotive Logistics. It's a pleasure to be back speaking once again. This morning's forum, excellent thus far, and what I'd like to do is talk a little bit on a very high level. The topic that we have here, supply in the world. We're in China. We've mentioned that China may be the manufacturer or the warehousing manufacturing of the world. So I've pulled some slides and some data from our regional headquarters, our Center of Logistics Excellence in Singapore, that apply to what we're doing here. We're trying to export, we're trying to import out of Asia Pacific, and particularly out of China. The first thing that we have to recognize is that the whole supply chain has changed over the last 10 years, and it continues to change at a rapid pace. This morning's inferences of the third plenum, the market-driven direction that the government is going to be taking, how that will play out will be very significant. Today's supply chain is extremely more complicated than it was, particularly in the automotive. I was part of what a former OEM called supplier footprint optimization, getting all of the tier ones, getting all of your parts out of low-cost countries, and that grew into a very complex supply chain. The challenge is that in Asia Pacific and China, the trade, the infrastructure is changing every day. That holds here in China as well as it does in India and Thailand. And how you as exporters, as importers in China, OEMs, deal with that is very important. The impact of e-commerce, it's something that the internet is moving a lot faster than the infrastructure of providers. It's requiring a change in the entire supply chain management. So what does that mean? It basically means that the supply chain has become integrated. It doesn't mean that one provider can sell an integrated solution, because at many times, the way the supply chain is sourced by the tier ones, by the OEMs, they're going to try to divide that up, identify the costs, go after the low cost, compiling different solution sets. But what that causes is a fractured supply chain. It needs to be integrated through the various components and the various services. Ideally, you want an end-to-end solution. Starting from the customer, starting from the, let's say, OEM, their order or their Del 4, Del Jet going to the supplier. Well, it needs to include the LSP or the supply chain manager, and then how that goes to the final mile. I mean, in theory, that part gets assembled into a vehicle and that vehicle gets delivered. The finished vehicle side, we'll talk about the various elements of that finished vehicle, but that visibility needs to be there for the customer, for the Automotive Dealer Association. Then you have the reverse logistics of the after sales. And as you read in the papers in the United States and in China, recalls are becoming more and more important because of the regulations. And the regulations in China are starting to say recalls need to happen here. The safety of the driver is the important aspect of the government, what they're going to focus on. And they'll let the market deal with it themselves. The OEMs that can't do it or aren't efficient, they will not be there. So it's a truly an end-to-end solution that you want to look and you want to source. Again, it may not be one provider. The visibility of that end-to-end total supply chain solution is what's foremost. You can have an automotive customer or a tier 1 customer, but then you have your visibility requirements. And visibility requirements, who wants to go out to 4 or 5 different systems? I know when I was on the OEM side, I didn't want it. Everyone would sell it. You need a freight neutral visibility tool. You can have air and ocean carriers, you can have 3PLs, you can have other providers. You want to have visibility of your inventory at your VMI warehouses. You want to know what's in transit. The key is the visibility. And that's going to drive the efficiency in the marketplace that, again, the Chinese government wants that. We heard this morning there's a transition from a logistics provider to a supply chain manager. Real important. It's not just you call, we haul. It's not I have a truck, I'll pick it up when I want. The automotive industry requires more, and it's even more demanding when we're importing and exporting. Supply chain management at a very high level, 7 key elements, and we'll go through each one of these elements. They don't have to be all together, but as tier 1s and as OEMs, you will start to feel pressure and ask for these. These are the elements that will enable an efficient way to import and export. Order management from the OEM. It's EDI. EDI is not new technology anymore. It's not innovative. It's been around for 20 years. Somewhat expensive, difficult to deal with, but very important that EDI capabilities are now driven into the market. 10 years ago in China, the compliance to EDI was not very high, and it's growing every day. India, several steps behind in terms of EDI compliance. But within the automotive world, you have to be EDI compliant, or you have to have somebody that can help you get there. Supplier management. Whether you're a tier 1, whether you're an OEM, or tier 2, tier 3. That order, you need to know what your supplier is doing with that order. If they fall behind, you fall behind, your customer is going to be yelling. That'll drive inefficiencies in logistics. It'll be expedited shipments. It'll be air freight. You won't be efficient. And again, the Chinese government and the state-run enterprises, they're not going to be paying the bill anymore. The efficiency needs to be driven through supply chain management. Planning and optimization. Didn't hear this morning sustainability. Everybody's focused on cost, but sustainability is important. It's not a direct topic of the automotive forums, although everybody talks about their app. What's the AQI today in Beijing? What's the AQI in Shanghai? Planning and optimization of logistics is going to help. Efficiency of your trucks is going to help. The first course, if you plan and you optimize your logistics routes, whether they're domestic, land, or international, you're going to save money. The sustainability piece just comes as a free benefit. The execution of the whole supply chain. When you put it together, you have the visibility. Are you getting what you paid for? An OEM, a tier 1, are we on time? Very important. If it's 13-hour inland transit on a ground, 14 hours isn't just, well, we had a flat tire. Visibility to that drives correction. On time in automotive manufacturing is paramount. I think you all know that, but again, the changeover from a state-run, we'll produce what we produce, to I have a production schedule and I need to produce because my profitability depends on it, the supply chain execution, whether it's domestic, international, becomes extremely important. The visibility, the order life cycle. If a product is sold for a certain transit time, it doesn't have to stay there. When you have a proactive supply chain management, you constantly improve. Transit time reductions are possible, whether it's reroutings, different modes, going into rail versus ocean. A big development that Gefco just talked about, the land bridge from China into Russia, from Korea into Uzbekistan. 10 years ago, very difficult. The reduction in transit times are now viable, and you can, and when you have a supply chain management philosophy, you change and adapt to become more efficient. Disruption management. When you live in China, Chinese New Year's isn't a disruption. But for everybody that doesn't live in China, Chinese New Year's is a disruption. Very difficult. Everything stops. And it never ceases to fail, whether you're an OEM, Tier 1, or a logistics supplier. The day before or the day that you're going on holiday, someone's going to call and say, I have a problem, I have an urgent shipment. Planning for disruption management is also supply chain management. It's how we're going to become efficient on exporting out of China. But if you're exporting out of China and going into India, India has twice as many holidays than China does. The India port environment, they have work slowdowns. Disruption management, it needs to be planned. You can pull forward. You can work with your carriers and come up with contingency planning. Very important on growing the import and export out of Asia Pacific. Network performance. Every OEM, every Tier 1 will have their scorecard or their metrics. Every provider will have theirs. It's very important to measure. If you don't measure, you're not going to improve. Supply chain management, what does it deliver? Really three things. Customer service. We as providers want to perform in your eyes. Tier 1s, you want to perform in the eyes of the OEM, and the OEMs want to perform in the eyes of their shareholders, their customers, and the dealerships. Cost, more efficiency, lower cost, reducing working capital. One that's not here is the sustainability. That's coming. It's going to become more in the forefront. Here in China, partnerships are very important. And my company, Siva Logistics, has a very strong partner. We've had it since 2002. One of the largest automotive logistics company in China, one of the largest freight forwarding and contract logistics, formed a partnership in 2002. We're called Anji Siva. Very good exposure here. 6, 7, 8, the JV's environment come and go with the third plenum, the market-driven economy. Who knows where those JVs are going to end up in the automotive world? But we look at our JVs, our sub-JVs, and it brings strength to what we provide here in China. Our capabilities span across all elements of the automotive, as well as other sectors. This is what we do. This is what we believe makes an efficient supply chain management. It's going to allow China to grow. It's going to allow you to grow OEMs, Tier 1s, importers and exporters out of China. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Bob. I think a really good overview of the sort of changing supply chain scenario in China in terms of what kind of added value, importance of systems right across the chain. Again, look forward to some of the Q&A that will follow. But before we move into that, I'd like to give Marco Wang just an opportunity to make a couple of opening remarks, and I'd maybe ask you to just talk a little bit about the network and the operations that you're responsible for as exporting parts out of Asia Pacific, and perhaps if you want to kick us off with a few of the challenges and trends that you see in the market right now that you're facing.
Okay.
You could talk, whatever you want to talk here? Okay.
Okay, good day, everyone. So, first of all, I need to say sorry, I didn't prepare a PPT, but I think this is a good, let's say, platform to share and exchange the information from our OEM perspective. You know, that Gefco and Siva made a very interesting presentation. So I just would like to, let's say, share some, let's say, experience or information from our side. So before my, let's say, brief introduction, I would like to share you one interesting, let's say, experience. You know, as a, let's say, as a team member of the global supply chain, usually, you know, I'm check email every Saturday morning. So that is the time, you know, is US night time. So I received an email that's with a high attention subject is saying, Marco, can you check? There has an earthquake in Yiliang City, Yunnan province. So, you know, this is for me, first of all, is very surprised. You know, the supply chain from US just would like check with me if anything is impact the China supply chain to US. So this is message is, let's say, China supply is become a very important role in the world. It means global-wise, the people is paying more attention and more sensitive, focus on the China supply chain. So this is just, let's say, it's an interesting experience to show how is the China role in the world now. I do believe that China Automotive is, you know, make China more close to the world. So let's say Fiat, you know, Chris just mentioned the BCC sourcing, best cost sourcing. Fiat-Chrysler started, let's say, BCC sourcing in 2005. So we started like 1,000 TU volume until today, I believe is more than 1,000 TU now. So I'm quite lucky that I went through the whole process. So the volume just stay at 1,000 now, stay at 100 TU, now becomes 1,000 TU. But now I think we do have some, let's say, challenge, let's say the logistic challenge in front of us in terms of BCC sourcing. I would like, let's say, just to share some experience with you. One, of course, is, you know, BCC sourcing, based on the past experience, China is, you know, become expensive now. It means in some point is lost some advantage now. China become expensive. So when our partner, you know, I would not mention name, but let's say when our logistics partner talk with us, need to increase the ocean freight, that's even, you know, more suffer to our BCC sourcing. So still the raw material cost, labor cost, plus let's say the logistics cost is still the big challenge to the BCC sourcing. The second is, let's say, the lead time. I remember in year 2007 or year 2008, more or less, from China seaport to the major European seaport is around 25 days to 28 days. But now, I mean, the recent 1 or 2 years, I know it's not a, let's say, logistics provider issue. It's a vessel company issue. But let's say the lead time now from China seaport to the European major seaport is around 35 or even longer to 40 days. You know, that will increase our, let's say, inventory cost. So this is, you know, another, let's say, challenge in front of us. The longer lead time compared with before. Yeah. So the third point is linked with this, let's say, lead time topic is inventory. You know, my role and my major responsibility is reduce the whole supply chain cost. So now I always struggling, you know, I'm facing a longer lead time, but I need to reduce, let's say, inventory costs at a destination. So I believe this is another challenge because usually for a BCC supply, I think different OEM have different experience, but usually you have 3 weeks or 4 weeks inventory at a destination. So, you know, I believe from management point of view, you want to reduce from 4 weeks to 2 weeks, of course, but let's say if we're considering the longer lead time compared with the past, this is really a big challenge. Yeah. So, yeah, another one I think is, let's say, the logistic model, because I think Robert and the Gefco teams just mentioned which logistic model is best for the BCC sourcing. You know, for me, I don't have the answers. You know, we have different options. We have VMI, we have DDP, we have FOB or FCA. So I would like to suggest, Chris, if next conference in Shanghai, you can raise this topic. I think people will be interested. Which is the best model, which is the best logistic model for the China sourcing? Yeah, I think each, let's say, logistics provider or different OEM can give the different opinions. Yeah. So that's my brief experience to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Again, I think an honest and open picture of some of the issues that Fiat-Chrysler is facing, and I think you raised some really excellent points. And as we kick into the Q&A, I'd like to steal your question straight off and throw it right back to the panel, maybe if they want to reflect on that a little in terms of their experience with delivery terms and what sort of transport mode in that sense is, I guess, you know, what are you most facing in China? What changes do you see? My understanding is that there's some shifts now more to FCA and X-Work versus before. Obviously, Gefco's doing a VMI scenario there. Anyone want to make some comments on that?
If we now look on the challenges and then especially talking about the transportation models, then of course, as I mentioned before, so we need to have a good mix. And what we see today is that ocean freight, as well Marco mentioned, has become a bit slower factor, and as well servicing our customers, we have seen some delays. So there are bigger ships take a longer time to load and unload, so we need to look into different opportunities. So the Gefco has been very active due to the Russian railways influence as well to develop the multimodal rail solutions. But it is pretty difficult here in China to find the best way for the rail solution up to the border with Kazakhstan or with Russia.
Bob, do you see any particular trends in terms of the transport models that CEVA is managing for the import-export flows?
I think that as soon as someone comes up with the best model, it'll be out of date. One of the things that we are seeing, and it was again mentioned this morning from a industry and a governmental level, is the efficiencies. It gets down to financial efficiencies, logistics efficiencies, sustainability. It's going to drive us as logistics providers to adapt. Whether one model's better for one customer is going to depend upon their financial situation. What we do as a provider will recognize that and will drive the efficiencies to meet their goals. We are not going to set up that model, but we certainly have to recognize whether it is a transit time priority, whether it's a cost, an inventory. But as the OEMs and tier ones in China become less dependent or are supported less by government and state-run industries, and the shareholder is going to demand returns on their capital, we know that the pressures are going to be more and more to reduce and become more efficient in the logistics supply chain. And the supply chain is not going to change dramatically. There's always going to be a best cost sourcing model, low cost country. The products will always have to be moved, and they'll have to be moved at the most efficient way. And that's really where SIVA believes that we are flexible enough and have the experience to use technology such as EDI, to do diversions, to do the disruption management in order to assist our customers meet their model, whatever it may be.
Thanks for that. I'd like to open the floor up to questions from the audience. Just a reminder, our panel was kind enough, obviously, to speak in English, maybe for my benefit or some of yours, but we have dual translation, so please feel free to ask a question in Chinese. The panel can respond in Chinese if particularly Bob, I think he's more comfortable there. So again, any questions from the audience at this time? Okay, you're a quiet bunch for now. I've got a few though. Starting with Gefco, talking maybe a little about the Trans-Siberian, the rail side. What's your kind of experience been with its reliability and quality in terms of, well, let's say lead time? We know the rough lead time. It seemed to be a pretty big range in some cases. What about the delivery quality, the damage rates, and all that kind of, that's a...
Based on our experience, so the timing has been becoming year by year but much better.
Yeah.
So talking about improving the quality, it has influenced a bit as well pricing. So the pricing has been increasing, but not so much. If we talk about the damage rates, so they have been under control and improving. So we have had a good experience, and especially as well now the logistical centers, dedicated logistical centers being developed in receiving part in different regions in Russia, so that has well helped to improve the service. So.
And who do you see as the kind of most likely users of this mode out of China? Is it Chinese OEMs, or do you envision joint ventures or suppliers? I mean, what's the sort of, in your view?
I think it is a very wide spectrum of the customers. So we have had experience supplying the OEMs. So this has been a backup or a faster solution for the ocean freight. So some of the OEMs have been using some supplies over to 15, 20 countries over the rail to have a faster solution if needed. So, but there shouldn't be any limit of the customers. So right. Of course it is the choice where the customers want to decrease the level of inventory, and have a priority on timing.
Thank you. Bob, you mentioned flow. I'm not sure if it's one that Steve is involved in, or if it's something that you have experience from the past, from Korea to Uzbekistan. Is that now a land bridge flow that's being used, or is that a potential that could come?
It is a viable and readily used mode of transportation. It's been growing there are multiple providers that are in that area. I think that the reliability, the damage, the ability to get the efficiencies through block trains is very important. It's growing, it's changed, it changes every year, it's getting better and better. And again, that's part of the efficiencies that the customers and the need to provide financial returns is driving this very exciting area. I think you see two different routes. You have the TSR and the TCR, and then going into the various locations to support automotive. From a SEVA standpoint, we see possibly a little more interest in the higher margin products, consumer retail. They are able to pay sometimes the premium for rail through this land bridge more readily than automotive. Automotive is a very low margin, high manufacturing number, high volume, but the retail and some other industries have a different model in terms of their financial margins and what they pass on to the customers. So,
yeah, interesting. Thank you. Any questions from the audience now? I'm afraid you won't get to lunch any sooner. You'll go when I say. So, I still have a few more questions I think we want to go through. Marco, in terms of the best cost country sourcing, I kind of raised it in the beginning, you followed up on it, you mentioned the growth from 2005 to now, for example, out of China. But how do you see that developing now? Is it for Fiat-Chrysler? Is there more sourcing still growing out of China to supply other regions, or is in fact that more stable? Is it shifting to other parts of Asia, for example?
Yeah, I mean, recently, the recent 1 or 2 years, because, usually my understanding, the global sourcing has kind of so-called time. The so-called times can be like 5 to 8 years. It means the global OEMs, the global tier 1 suppliers, they spend 5 to 8 years to utilize and optimize all the, let's say, BCC sourcing. So recently the trend, I think, if we just talk about the China point of view, for sure the speed is a little bit slowed down compared with like the year in 2005 to 2009 to 10, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that will be linked with, the cost which I just mentioned. Because we are increasing, let's say, raw material cost and the labor cost. So now I also take the responsibility of the APAC. So now even inside the APAC, we are doing some competition. So Robert just mentioned India. So India supply, they also have, let's say, good quality and good price. Yeah. The problem for India, from my point of view, probably is inland transportation networks. Yeah, but let's say the other country, like ASEAN country, like Thailand, Malaysia, they are all increase, let's say, the competition with the China market inside APAC, I mean. Yeah.
I mean, my sort of general observation would be most of the OEMs I'm speaking to now, when they talk about supplier optimization, it's now bringing them closer, as close as they can, if they can influence their suppliers to come. It seems to have been a shift there. I mean, there's always been obviously a strong local link in any manufacturing, but I mean, I've got a sense of a real shift back towards near and regional sourcing. So, I think we have a question in the corner. If you could say your name and company.
你好，我是来自神农汽车的一个捷克凯的合作伙伴。
I'm a partner of Gefco. I still have a question. My question is related still to international logistics. For example, if now a TEU is being transported from Shanghai to Moscow through ocean transportation and through railway transportation, what is the cycle of transportation and the price for ocean and for railway, respectively? And if it is a railway transportation, what are the challenges? For example, the number of commodities on the trains, how to address that challenges.
So question there about price differential, I think, between rail and sea, and also the challenge of different commodities on rail.
我可以用中文回答是吧 ？OK， 我来回答一下。
Answer it in Chinese.
刚才我的
Okay, I
同事
will
实际上
respond to
在
this question. Just now, my colleagues in the presentation has mentioned. Now we have ocean transportation and railway transportation. If we look at ocean transportation, basically the cycle is 30 days. Baltic Sea and Black Sea. And if you look at the railway, mainly two routes. First, from Alato Pass to Chongqing, Xinjiang, Europe line to, and then the other is go through Manchuria to use the Eurasia railway line to reach Moscow. If it is door-to-door railway transportation, the cycle is 17 to 18 days. However, if you look at the cost, yes, as a matter of fact, the railway price is much higher than that of ocean transportation. The railway price is 2 times that of the ocean transportation. So when you consider railway or air transportation, when you prioritize railway transportation, we are comparing it to air transportation. For example, your production line, if the needs cannot be met by ocean transportation, and you need to have air transportation, you may also consider the option of railway transportation, maybe more realistic. But compared with ocean transportation, the price of railway transportation is 2 times that of ocean transportation.
Maybe just to add what Jason said, that yes, we're talking about saving the time twice. So railway is 50% faster than the ocean through the traditional ports. But as well, we faced a pricing challenge. Again, the pricing is depends on the volume. So if we talk about the block trains, then the difference is not so big. But if we talk about the group of the wagons, then the difference is twice.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Any other questions from the audience? Right in the back.
I think I have a question to Gefco. So during your presentation, you said you have a warehouse for the cross-dock and VMI in Shanghai city. So my question is, where do you locate your warehouse in Shanghai, in the free trade zone or outside the free trade zone? And from your perspective, what's the main difference between setting up a warehouse in free trade zone or not, and out of the free trade zone? Yeah, that's my question.
I can help to answer. So for this warehouse, actually it's a non-bonded warehouse that's close to Lingang. As we mentioned that we have a trading company, these OEMs. That means we have the domestic sourcing. That means the OEM buy from the Chinese supplier on RMB, and then when they do the export, is this OEM trading with these overseas partners. So in this scenario, we don't think the necessity to have in a bonded warehouse. In my understanding, in the export consolidation is normally, if you look at the current practice from GM and Ford, they are all for the non-bonded. But there's only case if you're considering the bonded warehouse might have the multiple consolidation. We call it MCC. That means you will have the parts from Korea, from Japan, and into Shanghai. Then you build up have the same consolidation, then export to the one destination. So I think in this case, it makes much sense to have a bonded warehouse in the free trade zone.
Just to add to Jason is that actually we have another project as a Gefco for supplying car makers one customer in Russia. And based on this customer's need, we have set up the warehouse close to the Russian border in the Baltics. So we have supplies from Europe and outside of Europe, so within European Union and outside from European Union, from more than 20 different suppliers. And consolidating on the same purpose is all the goods into the bonded warehouse in the Baltics and supplying the factory already in consolidated form from this location. So we are flexible and can provide different solutions.
Bob, do you want to make any comments on free trade zones and the implications for the supply chain there? I mean, I believe that in the third plenum announcements, I mean, the expansion of these free trade zones is also on the agenda for the government.
Yes.
There are specific directions on Shanghai increasing and growing their free trade zone model. I would agree with the comments. Locating the warehouse inside a free trade zone, yes, there are quite a bit more regulations. There are more procedures. The accuracy of your inventory and your system dependency on systems becomes very high. It's not an easier environment in which to operate, and one needs to evaluate why and how they set it up. Taking material from China and putting it into your free trade zone, and if you have an OEM crisis and they say, well, bring those parts out and we're going to use them in China, extremely difficult, if not impossible. Parts go into free trade zones to be exported. Many tier ones, many OEMs think, well, I see the part through your visibility, I want those for local consumption, and that becomes very difficult. So the strategy of setting up a free trade zone and the ability to meet the regulatory requirements are very high, but that strategy is more of a long-term strategy. It's not a turn it on, turn it off environment because of the setup and the requirements there.
Yeah, interesting there. Any other points from the audience? Right here in the front, actually. Haley. We'll start here and then we'll do another one. Right, second row. Second row, you're going past them. I think it's on. Just try talking into it, they should turn it on. Is that mic dead? Can we get another mic quickly? Run, Brett, run. I think it'll turn on. Try again.
你再说一遍。
There we are.
I speak in Chinese. Yeah. 我想问一下呢。My question is again for Gefco, the presenter from Gefco. In comparison with maritime transportation, railroad, it has got a higher costs. But for railroad transportation from China to Russia, besides the costs, what other barriers to railroad transportation, whether you via the route of Xinjiang or Manzhouli, there are different nodes in the railway system, and you have custom clearance delay. And you think these constitute barriers to railroad transportation? In your experience, and how do you resolve these kind of barriers to the railroad transportation?
Just to say that you are probably aware that Russia and Kazakhstan are now in the same customs union, so the customs procedures in both countries are not yet unified fully, but they will be unified fully within the next 1-2 years. So there is of course a difference if you enter the 1520 zone through Kazakhstan or if you enter through directly to Russia. But today we don't see the big challenges regarding the crossing the border and customer-related issues or big delays. So main issue is providing the capacity, rail capacity on the border crossing, because there is enough rail capacity both sides before and after the border crossing. What route to choose to go through the Kazakhstan or go through directly to Russia through Manjuli, Zabakalsk, or even to use Trans-Mongolian route. This depends more on origin of cargo, not the destination. So the best route for the cargo, what is from central China and the central western part of China, of course, has more efficiency if you're using the Trans-Kazakhstan Railroad. But if we talk about the East Coast and if we talk about Northeast China, then the direct entry to Russia through Manjuli, Zabakalsk is much better. But challenge is today to have enough well-prepared infrastructure, enough capacity at the border crossing.
Thank you for that. Do we have any final questions from the audience? We started a bit late, so I wanted to give us a bit of the panel a full kind of time, but we are now coming towards our lunch period. So I think if there's one more question, we can take it. If not, I think we can call it there. So I think you're all ready to eat. Well, before we do, I'd like to thank our panel. I think it was great presentations and really interesting discussion. No doubt we'll be revisiting some of the themes, including this afternoon when we have a logistics provider development session. Please join us now for the lunch sponsored by Beijing Changchun. Changchun is just next door. Thank you.